Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Giving honor and praise unto Yah, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. I want to say Torah Yah, or thank Yah for being well and coming along in the health department after from last week, the situation of me being in the hospital and so forth and so on. On a human level, want to give due respect to the people who supported and helped, who was there for a brother with advice and constructive criticism. Brothers and sisters, we want to get into this particular presentation called From Tiglath to Hadrian. Now, Tiglath that we're speaking about is one of the leaders of the Assyrians from, brothers and sisters, the matter of the 8th century BCE to the era of Hadrian, who was a Roman emperor during, say, the time of the matter in the 2nd century AD or the 2nd century CE. So hopefully, brothers and sisters, people are able to hear and people are well. We ask you, brothers and sisters, to get your pens, your pads, and your paper and to take notes. And, brothers and sisters, if you are able to hear and are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If you are able to hear and if you're in good spirits, please type in the number 4. It is definitely much appreciated. Thank you. On a human level, giving due respect to my lady Sarah Michaela. On a human level, giving due respect to the brother Yirmiyahu Yisrael. And brothers and sisters, we hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. Without any further ado, let us pull this up, as is the custom, stop the camera, and we're going to go to present, if we will, go to screen share, if we will, brothers and sisters, and pull this up here in this case, if we will, brothers and sisters. How's everybody feeling? Thank you all for subscribing to the channel, for commenting, liking, sharing, and so forth, if you will. All right? And this is going to be quite in the history side, if you will, brothers and sisters. I do not profess to know everything, and I am open to constructive criticism. All right? Now, for those who do know, I have been hearing things such as, brother, we need you to take care of your health and things of that kind of nature. Well, a brother needs you too. The situation that happened with a brother's health recently is my fault. Can't say it was this person or that person or the other person, because when a person does good, they generally don't say it's because of this person, that person, or the other person. They say he or himself or herself did good for himself or herself. So in light of that, we also got to take into account that particular situation. All right? So let us pull this up, brothers and sisters. And let us start from slideshow and from beginning. Glory to the Most High. This presentation is presented to you all from DanitePublications. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. The Assyrians. Assyria. We're going to be reading in some parts in the scriptures, asking you to get your pens, your pads, and your paper, and to take notes. In 2 Kings, letting the book speak for itself. 2 Kings chapter 15, verse 29. Because in certain cases, people say, oh, the scriptures is not a historical book. But if you have it to where the scriptures in quote unquote secular history agree, how can it not be a book regarding history of a particular people? 1 Kings 15:29 says, in the days of Pekah, king of Israel, came Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and took Ijon and Abel Beth Maacah, and Yanoah, and Kadesh, and Hazor, and Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and carried them captive to Assyria. So, brothers and sisters, for those who know, on the west side of the Jordan, the tribe of Naphtali is like one of the first tribes to be taken into captivity. Josiah was king of Judah when Babylon defeated Assyria in 609 BCE. What's going on? You have it to where Nabopolassar and then later on his son, the famous Nebuchadnezzar, all right, had defeated the people of the indigenous Babylonians, being Chaldeans themselves, and set forth in that time what became known, brothers and sisters, as the 11th dynasty of such. Josiah was assassinated by Necho of the 26th dynasty of Egypt. Dynasty 26 of Egypt, brothers and sisters, was after the matter of the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom of Israel, all right, taken into captivity. The Egyptians that were during that time when Hosea was king over the nation of Israel is Dynasty 25. Dynasty 25 of Egypt is also known as the Cushite, which they also refer to in timelines of history as what they like to call what? The Nubian or black kings or pharaohs. But here's something to point out. They'll like to say something of that kind of nature because, as a brother pointed out in his book, Egypt Talk and Writing, the true Egyptians and the true Israelites can be portrayed in Cecil B. DeMille's film as European people because the true Egyptians and the true Israelites fell to the Caucasians. The Nubians, aka the Cushites, did not. When Alexander, not to jump the gun of what we're talking about, attempted to go into Ethiopia and penetrate toward the 5th cataract of the Nile, he wound up getting defeated. You understand? So looking upon it like that, the Israelites can't say that. The Egyptians can't say that. You had, no disrespect intended, white men on the throne of Egypt in Dynasty 32. You understand? You had Israelite leaders that were puppets to the Greeks and Romans, for those who do know the history. So now, decades and centuries later, when they want to portray the Hebrews, the Israelites, and the people of Sumatari or Mizraim or Kemet or Egypt, it's easy to put any image up in Cecil B. DeMille's film. But even in that film, when they showed the Nubians, they had to show how they would have looked. Or how they did look. You understand? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. Babylon came up as a power in 626 BCE under Nabopolassar, and his son is the famous Nebuchadnezzar. This Nebuchadnezzar is mentioned in 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 8 through 12. Jehoiakim was taken captive with Ezekiel in Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 1. Now, what can we point out? Do you know that there is a record from the Babylonians to this day in what they call the Berlin Museum, speaking about King Yaokinu of Yehudu? I emphasize that again, as I pointed out in the book that I wrote called Israelite History as it Relates to the World. For those who are interested, you can get that book online. Israelite History as it Relates to the World. I pointed out that in the Berlin Museum, there is a record from the Babylonians speaking about Yaokinu of Yehudu. Who is Yehudu if not Yehuda? And who is Yehuda if not Judah? So these things is not just made up. Brothers and sisters, we want to point this out for reference purposes. All right? So if there's any questions or comments, please feel free to type it into the chat. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to type it into the chat. Next. Medes and Persians. The Medes and the Persians were not one kingdom until the era of Cyrus II, who in 550 BCE defeated Astyages of the Medes. The Babylonians fell to the Medes in 539 BCE, and the Israelites get some reprieve when you go to Ezra chapter 1, verse 1. So, brothers and sisters, let's look at this. We're going to read Ezra chapter 1, verse 1, so that way we can sit there and show how the scriptures is, yes, a historical book. Some people have stated, as pointed out in a presentation called From Jerusalem to the Hood, Part 4, well, how can, quote, the Bible be a history book when there's no dates in it? But the Sumerian tablets don't have dates. The Egyptian papyrus don't have dates. When me and my lady Sarai was in Egypt, and back in 2021, we seen the records of the Egyptians inside the museums. Do you know how they chronicle that? The same way the Bible chronicles it, according to what's called regnal dating. You understand? Regnal dating is when they timeline things according to the era of a king, not AD or BCE. All right? So now, brothers and sisters, when we go to Ezra chapter 1, verse 1, it says, now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout his kingdom and put it in writing, saying, and it goes on regarding this matter of Cyrus. Brothers and sisters, we went over the fact in the presentation called From Jerusalem to the Hood, Part 3, about the Murashu. The Murashu were the people of Judah, or the Israelites, that was selling things during the timing while they was inside of the Persian Empire. Sanballat, you read of in the book of Nehemiah, you know that? He's also mentioned inside of the records of the Persians. So, brothers and sisters, these are not things that we're just making up. As we already know, we've gone over the matter of Israelites in Egypt. You read about Shifra and Pua in Exodus. You read of a certain Shifra in the Brooklyn Museum papyrus. You can go over, correct me if I'm wrong, to the Brooklyn Museum on a 2 or 3 train in New York City and see where that's at, brothers and sisters. So when we document and talk about the things that we present to the people, we don't want to come off as, quote, oh, it just sounds religious, or it just sounds he's citing something without any, quote, unquote, external reference. Of course, the scriptures is going to confirm what you're saying because you're speaking about confirming the scriptures. But we want to take it, no disrespect to the scriptures, outside of it. And if your doctrine cannot stand to scrutiny, then your doctrine is weak. Just as much as the Apocrypha says, acceptable men are go through the furnace of adversity. And if you break down, that doesn't mean that you're wicked and can't get back up. That just means you got to see where your weaknesses is at. So, brothers and sisters, we want to point this out for edification purposes. Let's go on. Israelites in Elephantine. There were Israelites in Elephantine, Egypt, where they had a temple dedicated to Yahoo, though unfortunately they did worship idols there also. Now, why does that become important in part? The Elephantine papyrus was found and brought out by a man named James Breasted. James Breasted was a person that is cited by the guy Ashwakwezi. How does all of this tie in? A lot of the people into the Kemetic studies and so forth cite Ashwakwezi against the Israelites, even though Ashwakwezi cites Joseph ben Yochanan, or Dr. Ben as he was called, who stated that the so-called Falashas are his people, who they claim to be in the children of Israel. But as you can see, no disrespect intended, you don't get millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars teaching you're the children of Israel. My teachers were not balling. My teachers worked in warehouses. They worked as nurses, even as males. They worked as custodians. You understand? They lived in apartments in the projects. Those were some of my teachers with their families. They wasn't sat there and given, oh, we're going to put you up in this just as long as you uphold our doctrine. You understand? So, brothers and sisters, getting into this particular subject and so forth and so on. Elephantine Allen and the Elephantine Papyrus, when you go into a book that's edited by James Pritchard, you will begin to see the writings of it talks about keeping the Passover. Why does that become important? Because this dates, brothers and sisters, to the era before the Greeks came to power in the 4th century BCE. So how in the world is the Bible, in this case, namely the Old Testament, from the Europeans when there were people doing Tanakh principles and rites or rites of the Tanakh, such as Passover, before the Europeans came into power? Passover, for the lack of a better term, is a black people's holy day. It is not a Khazarian Jews' holiday. And a Passover papyrus speaks upon such. This is why one of the things I respect about traveling that my ladies put me on to is being able to go around and see things in the world such as that. You understand? The Persians were during this time had matters with the Greeks and a battle of Marathon in 490 BCE and with Macedon in 492 BCE. Why does that become important? Because Persia, according to the book that I wrote, Egypt, Talk and Writing, was one of the last black great empires on earth. Now, how you know they were black is because when you look at their artwork, brothers and sisters, when you go into the palace of Susa, which the Americans attempted to bomb in Iraq. You understand? And maybe not because of idols, because America worshiped idols, but they kept on bombing because they knew what they were trying to hide, perhaps. You understand? So what do we want to point out in this particular case, if we will, family, is this. Nations began to conquer through war. Sometimes treaties were made when there could be no decisive victory upon said matter. Sometimes you had alliances where people were married into the royal family of another people. You understand? So when we start talking about kingdoms and empires and things of that kind of nature, we want to put it out there for the people. And I hate to have to sound like some people might say, oh, you're stuck on your PowerPoints and books, but I can almost promise you, you can take this kind of stuff there to the bank. You can take the notes that a brother brings out, thank the Most High, and put it to a college paper and deliver it to your historian teacher. Brothers and sisters, this is not to sound arrogant, but I want to talk about something with the Romans. And if somebody can remember when I get to the matter with Hadrian, what happened when I was in school one time. Next slide, please. Persia and the Egyptians and the Israelites. Persia, too, had rule over Egypt, and this was Dynasty 27. They also had rule in Egypt in Dynasty 31. Cyrus, though I taught in the past he ruled in Egypt, it was actually his son that did rule in Egypt named Cambyses. Cambyses, his cousin is Darius I who ruled in Egypt. Do you know Darius I, correct me if I'm wrong, is the same Darius that you read of in the book of Daniel? So when we read about Darius, Daniel or Daniel chapter 9, that's the cousin of Cambyses. Daniel the prophet lived seeing the fall of the Babylonian Empire and the rise of the Medo-Persian Empire, but passed away before the rise of the Greek Empire. So sometimes people may not understand that timeline, what the book of Daniel and what the prophecies there were about, and so forth and so on. But in time, giving thanks to the Most High, we will get into that kind and that particular subject. All right? Then after Cambyses, his cousin Darius I ruled in Egypt. Xerxes is the son of Darius I and is the Ahasuerus that Esther speaks of. Do you know this leads into what they call the movie 300? For those who know about that particular subject. So we want to point out Israelites as it stands in the history of the world. Where do you stand as an Israelite? Why do you stand such as an Israelite? And so forth and so on. When you say you're an Israelite, you have a land, though we're not there in part, a language, though we're still learning our language, and a culture, which we still got to work on our character and such. When you say you are part of other matters, it's religious, a language that's not uniquely yours, a culture that's not uniquely yours. And this is not to get sidetracked. My brothers and sisters who claim to be autochthonous or indigenous to what you call the United States, and that we didn't come from another place by boat or otherwise, your argument against who you call the Black Hebrew Israelites is moot. Because we are saying that we come from the land of the East. So if you are saying that we are from the land here in the West, don't argue with us. We don't want to sit there and have to fill a treaty with you. We want our passports and other things to get up out of here as soon as we can. So the indigenous Native American community of Black people arguing against Black people saying we come from the lands of the East, Africa or otherwise, there's no point in you arguing with us. Your argument is with the natives that's in the reservations, if anything, that got the casinos, if anything, not with us. Same. Brothers and sisters saying that we are truly Egyptians. Me and my lady been in Egypt. Your argument ain't with us. We may go over, might even be mesmerized by the pyramids or the Sphinx, as I saw when I was with the tour guide, wondering why they cut off the lips and the noses. listen, people, when me and my lady was in Egypt back in 2021, they have a museum where they show the nose chopped off as a monument. I think that's kind of disrespectful, Shem, Ham, or Jaffe. They show you the monument in the museum with the guy's nose cut off. If that ain't rude, I don't know what is. But anyway, brothers and sisters, if you're saying you're the people of Waset or Thebes, the people of Ayunu or Heliopolis, if you're saying you're the people of Menophah or Memphis, if you're saying you're the people of Yeb or Elephantine, if you're saying that the Iteru, the Egyptian term for what we call the Nile River, is truly yours in your land, there ain't no point in arguing with the quote Black Hebrew Israelites, because we're saying the Jordan River is ours. We're saying that Jerusalem is ours. We're saying that Be'er Sheba is ours. We're saying that Haifa and Aijalon is ours. We're saying that on the east side of the Jordan by Amman is ours. So we don't want Egypt, my brother, my sister. If that's where your roots go back to, then you can claim that. You ain't gonna get no argument from us. So I'm saying that to point this out is that the argument has been shifted while those who are claiming our claimed lands, America, if you say so, Egypt, if you say so, Israel, as we say so, they up there laughing at us. So let's go on, brothers and sisters, in this case. The Greeks, giving honor and praise unto the Most High. If I can be heard, and if people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. Thank you. First Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 4. And I'm going to be reading out the Apocrypha that some time ago my lady Sarai bought for me. The book of the Apocrypha, brothers and sisters, First Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 1. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, the king of the Persians and Medes, that he ruled over his stead, the first over Greece. And he made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty, strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings, and who became tributaries to him. Brothers and sisters, he went as far as he could go, all the way to what you call India of today, as pointed out right there inside the slide. It is known, too, he tried to take over Ethiopia, but was defeated. The Greeks brought Hellenism and tried to make everything Greek. Brothers and sisters, let's see what the Apocrypha says concerning that kind of matter. Let's go to First Maccabees, chapter 3, verse 48. First Maccabees, chapter 3, verse 48. And it reads as follows. This is talking about what the Greeks did. And laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. Are you mean to tell me that they took the records of the Israelites from, say, way back when? And try to put their images and pictures in it? You mean that's not a new thing that they were doing, brothers and sisters? Of course not. Alexander won both the battle of Issus and Gargamella. Cassander, Ptolemy, Seleucus, and Antigonus. They were the successors of Alexander, and Antigonus was replaced by Lysimachus. So, brothers and sisters, we've gone over this in the past. Just want to recap. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. The Hebrews and the Greeks. The Ptolemies and the Seleucids followed after Alexander, 320 to 198 BCE. Ptolemy took Israelites to Egypt and Cyrene. Cyrene is in modern-day Libya. Ptolemy II took Israelites who were in Alexandria, Egypt, and had them write the Septuagint. This he wanted for his library. The Greeks were not the authors of the Septuagint. Antiochus III defeated Ptolemy IV and Ptolemy V. Seleucus IV was defeated by Israelites when he tried to rid Judah due to the growing power of Rome. Why do I want to point that out in that particular case, brothers and sisters, is this. What was going on during that time? Israel was under the oppression of the Greeks after Alexander. First with the Ptolemies and then later on with the Seleucids. Antiochus IV, the brother of Seleucus IV, disposed Onias III, who happened to be an Israelite, the priest, and promoted nudity in Israel. When Demetrius I, the successor of Antiochus IV, came to power, Onias IV went to African places for peace since the land of Israel was being lost to the true Israelites. So, brothers and sisters, what again can we point out? The nudity was promoted. In light of the nudity being promoted, they was trying to wean out the culture of the Israelites. Just because it's hot doesn't mean that you got to sit there and dress in a certain way where, quote, people see things. You understand? Any questions or comments, please feel free to type it in the chat. The Carthage people. The Carthaginians, as pointed out earlier, were akin to the Jews in blood. This is according to Will Durant. The people of Carthage had a leader named Hamilcar, who fought against Rome's leader Regulus. Hamilcar was called Barca, which is translated as lightning. Next part. Carthage lost Sardinia and Corsica to Rome due to the bad decision making that Barca did. He went against his people. Hasdrubal was the son-in-law to Hamilcar. This leads into where we're getting into with Carthage, brothers and sisters. When the famous Hannibal was 7 years old, Hamilcar made him swear that he would avenge Rome, which he did, brothers and sisters. Never having actually conquered Rome and Rome itself. What he did at the age of 17, brothers and sisters, was lead the people out from Carthage, which is in northern Tunisia. We spoke about Tunisia on the channel last night, and went over through France, south side of Germany, and then went south into Italy, trying to make it into Rome, where he had what they call the Second Punic Battle, brothers and sisters. So he wound up fighting them at the age of 21, but actually started that march, if you will, brothers and sisters, when he was 17. Next part. The wars. Greece, Rome, and Carthage. In 230 BCE, the Romans went against the Greeks in the Illyrian War. This was due to trade. Rome and Hasdrubal made a treaty, and the Carthaginians agreed to stay in Spain and Rome. They hoped Rome would unite Italy and get the Gauls out. Now, how does all of this tie in? Gaul is France of today, brothers and sisters. So now when we begin to sit there and see how the Europeans come into power, how the Europeans come into play in the history of the world, came with Greece, their mother of civilization, then Rome, then other places, eventually leading into England, which gave birth to what we call the United States of today. This is why they are in debt to them to this day, and so forth. All right? Let's go on. In the year 219 BCE, Hannibal with Gallic tribes went against Rome. The Boii tribe, or the Boii, as some refer to it as, was among them. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE, was partly due to the fact that Rome violated the treaty made with Hasdrubal. In 217 BCE, the Carthaginians defeated the Romans by hiding in the woods, and this is when Caius Flaminius was defeated. Philip V of Macedon and Hannibal united against Rome. Now, Philip V was, correct me if I'm wrong, of the Greek people, and so forth and so on. As we read, Macedon became a colony of the Greeks. So now you had it to where the Carthaginians were actually lined up in political matters and made treaties against the Romans and so forth and so on. So these were world powers, brothers and sisters, that we do not want to neglect in history. You understand? Now remember, one of the things during slavery is that we were not expected to read and write. I point that out almost as much as I talk maybe about my mother when I do lives. May she rest in peace. It was my mother, may she rest in peace, who helped put me on a path to wanting to read and so forth. And when she saw where a young man's passion was like, okay, cool, let me support the history thing and so forth and so on. You understand? But brothers and sisters, whatever you're choosing to into, as long as it ain't wicked, support it. Don't be like, well, I'm this, so my child must be the same thing. No, because each person's spirit is different. And your child is on loan to you. Your child is alone. You understand? And eventually he or she is going to get into their own spirituality and their own way of reasoning things out. It's your duty as a parent to sit there and guide it in righteousness. Next part. The later part of the Greeks and Romans. The people of Anatolia made a league against Philip V and befriended Rome. Rome made war against Philip V, then reinstated him. Scipio Africanus and Lucius fought against Antiochus III. Now, Antiochus III is the same Antiochus that the book of the Apocrypha talks about in the book of Maccabees. See how this history ties in? Perseus made a league with Seleucus IV, the brother of Antiochus IV. We're going to get into Antiochus IV because the issue that the Israelites had with him is what led to the celebration of Hanukkah or Hanukkah. Perseus was defeated by Lucius Paulus and was led as a captive to Rome. Mummius of Rome defeated the Greeks in 146 BCE. In 154 BCE, Portugal fought against Rome for 16 years. Their leader, Viriathus, was assassinated. The Israelites were in the matters of the events of the world of their day. All of that history regarding Carthage, the matter with Portugal and Rome, the matter with the Greeks and the Romans, the matter with the people of the ancient Persians, which later on became in part the Parthians of Rome. Politically, all intertwined in history, because the Israelites was also a part of that. So we definitely do not want to neglect that particular subject in that matter. Any questions or comments, please feel free to type it into the chat. The Hebrews, Parthians, and the Greeks. Hanukkah came about because of the result of the Beth Zur battle. This was in 164 BCE, and it's 4 years after the Pitna battle and 15 years before the Third Corinth battle. Simon of the Maccabees is recorded as a king. You can go into the historian Tacitus about that, because he got rid of the Seleucid garrisons in Judea and Gezer. Remember Gezer? Why does that become important in part? Gezer. Anybody know? Gezer was one of the principal cities that Solomon had, king of Israel. There is what they call the Gezer calendar that dates back in archaeology to the timing of Solomon. The calendar is talking about vegetation. You understand? Antiochus IV was defeated also by John Hyrcanus and Judah, being a person in this case, both being the sons of Simon. Now, Simon, brothers and sisters, is the relative of Judas Maccabeus, both being the sons of Matithya Maccabee that you read of in 1 Maccabees chapter 2. During the era of Simon, the Seleucids sent Antiochus VII, who defeated the Israelites but was later killed by the Parthians. The Parthians were workers for the Persians. So now when you read about the kingdom of the Persians being for a season and for a time, even after the fall of them as an empire, brothers and sisters, we can begin to see how that coincides. Next slide. The Hebrews and Julius Caesar. After the era of John Hyrcanus, the son of Simon, we see Aristobulus, then Alexander Jannaeus, then a woman named Alexandra. The sons of Alexandria were Aristobulus II, who seized power, and Hyrcanus, who was controlled by Antipater, two joined with Aretas III and Ishmaelite. Now, why does all of that become important in this case? I want to, brothers and sisters, take with the pen, right? Hyrcanus, controlled by Antipater. You know Antipater is a relative of Herod. Herod was the famous Idumean, aka the Edomites. So you had an Ishmaelite by the name of Aretas and an Edomite by the name of Antipater, who were friends of the Romans. And their goal was to rid the culture of the Israelites. Do you understand? Pompey was killed by the army of Ptolemy XIII, a Greek pharaoh in Egypt. Julius Caesar eventually took over and made Antipater procurator and Hyrcanus ethnarch. Hyrcanus was an Israelite. Antipater was an Edomite. Remember, you got politicians to this day that are of people who are controlled by others. It's not that far-fetched in history. Next part. Rome, Edom, and the Israelites. Edom and Rome were attempting to rid Israel when Antipater died of poison. Mark Antony, we're familiar with him, made Herod and his brother Phasael tetrarch. Tetrarch meaning a ruler of a particular aspect of 4 cities. Mark Antony lost to Augustus, so Herod made friends with Augustus. Aristobulus II was father to Antigonus, who was aided by the Parthians to seize power in Jerusalem. Aristobulus II, we read here, is an Israelite. Herod, aided by the Romans, took over Jerusalem and destroyed the temple that Ezra built. Herod set up another temple. He renamed Samaria Sebaste, which was in praise of Augustus. Herod set up his sons to rule. His sons Archelaus was later removed by Augustus. Augustus was the first Roman emperor. Did you know that? We're going to go over, in concluding this, the list of these peoples whom we're talking about, from Tiglath to Hadrian, is the presentation here. Who made Israel break covenant? Agrippa I and Caligula were friends. Agrippa is an Edomite. Caligula, we already know, he was responsible in part for the death of Tiberius. He is his predecessor. Caligula gave Judea, Samaria, Galilee, and Perea to Agrippa. So Caligula of Japhet, a Roman emperor, was friends with the Edomite Agrippa and gave him lands inside the land of Israel. The Romans eventually killed Agrippa. Agrippa II, the son of Agrippa I, aided by Nero of Rome, added Galilee and Perea to Agrippa II's realm. So you have Caligula, and then eventually you get to Nero. Nero, we already knew what he was about, an assassinating of his own mother, or matricide as it's called, named Agrippina. Antiochus IV, like Hadrian, both opposed circumcisions. Hyrcanus made the Edomites become circumcised. Hyrcanus, remember, was an Israelite. Between Antiochus IV and Hadrian, Nero, Domitian, and Nerva made circumcision banned. Why were they so dead set on making sure Israel was breaking the covenant? Because we got to remember the Israelites had the Edomites under subjugation and taught the Edomites the laws of the Israelites. So now, like Isaac, the ancestor, stated concerning Edom and Jacob, when you break Jacob's yoke off of your neck, you shall bear rule over it. But we know the later prophecy that says Edom is the end of this world and Jacob is the beginning of the world that comes, when you go in your book of the Apocrypha and the book of Ezra. So, brothers and sisters, what we want to point out in this is that the Edomites made a league with whom? The Romans. So now when you go in Obadiah, and it said, all the men of your confederacy have conducted you to the border, the Romans eventually turned on the Edomites, for those who are into that kind of history. But it was the leaders of the Romans taught by the Edomites to make sure Israel don't keep the covenant, i.e. the Shabbat, i.e. circumcision, i.e., eating clean. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. Edom, Rome, and the Israelites, part 2. The Israelites were, quote, the third world in their day and that time. The other two worlds were the Edomites and the Romans. A Roman procurator named Florus stole from the temple. And this is the reason for the revolt that caused Nero to send Vespasian against the Israelites. The Israelites in Beth Tehran defeated the Romans. Then the Israelites lost to the Romans in part due to the internal matters among themselves. See, Israel not getting along, even after defeating the Romans, caused the Romans to eventually defeat the Israelites. Wake up call, Israel. Vespasian went to Rome when Nero died and left Titus to besiege Jerusalem. Hadrian later named Jerusalem Aelia Capitolina. The next major war was the Kittos battle and the era of Trajan. Then the Bar Kokhba revolt in the era of Hadrian. So, brothers and sisters, I just want to change something real quick. Only human. In this particular case, and in all cases, I'm only human. Right? Bar Kokhba. So we're going to go to slideshow and continue in current slide. All right? Thank you for that, brothers and sisters. So when we go in this presentation called From Tiglath to Hadrian, this is what we're talking about. Let's go on. Assyrians in my meal, because this is the kind of food I eat now. I'm not eating the carbohydrates as I was before, for those who do know what's been recently going on. The Assyrians were of importance to the Israelites. Shalmaneser III, Adad Nerari, Tiglath-Pileser III, Shalmaneser V, Sargon II, Sennacherib, Esarhaddon, Ashur-Wabalit. Next part. The Babylonians, which were important to the Israelites, as follows: Nabopolassar, Nebuchadnezzar, Awil-Marduk or Evil Merodach, Nabonidus, Belshazzar. List of rulers and notes. The Persians of importance. The Persians of importance. Cyrus II, Cambyses, Darius I, Xerxes I, Artaxerxes or Xerxes I. The Seleucids of importance to the Israelites. Seleucus I, Antiochus III, Seleucus IV, Antiochus IV. The Romans of importance to the Israelites. Pompey, Julius Caesar, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Vespasian, Titus, Domitian, Trajan, Hadrian. Giving honor and praise unto Yah, the creator, the maker of heaven and earth. I ask you all and encourage you all to watch this video again. The way I did it toward the end of it, about the Assyrians of importance, Babylonians of importance, Persians of importance, Seleucids of importance, and Romans of importance. And so that way, if you watch the video, you can stop it and take notes without me reading every single thing in a particular case. So if I can be heard and if people are in good spirits in closing out, please type in the number 4, and I appreciate your support in this. All right. So again, this was called, brothers and sisters, from Tiglath of Assyria to Hadrian of Rome. Hopefully it was enjoyed. Hopefully people learned from it. And I, again, am open to constructive criticism. All right? Giving honor and praise unto Yah, the creator, the maker of heaven and earth. Brothers and sisters, if I offended anyone, forgive me, as I am learning and am a work in progress myself. It is never one's intention to offend any brother, sister, or elder. Shalom, Chief Shama. How are you doing, elder? So, brothers and sisters, we ask you all to subscribe to the channel, to comment, to like, and to share. On a human level, a shout out to my lady, Sarah Michaela. Thank you for your support. Shout out to my brother, Shama Eliezer. Chief Shama, I must state. Shalom, Mora Bat Sheba. Shalom, Yirmiyahu Yisrael. Shalom, Kamori Rainey. And to everybody else that's in the chat, whether currently now or will hear later, the support is definitely appreciated. So I'm going to end the presentation now, and most I willing, do more presentations in the future. Shalom. Mosai be with you all. Have a great evening and a blessed week.